Terracana by Remus Evanhart. Prologue, the Battle-Mage. I yawn as I slowly get up from my straw bed. These inns may not be the most comfortable, but at least they're affordable. Getting up slowly, I stretch my limbs and get my blood flowing again. I check my belongings to see if it's all still here. Can't be too careful in places like this. My iron longsword and yew wood staff are still at the foot of the bed. My half-plate armor is still there as well. I put my armor back on, which consists of iron chestplate with small pauldrons, iron boots and iron gauntlets, black leather leggings, and 3 pouches down on each side of my thighs, and a black leather hood. I strap the sword to my left hip and use the staff as a walking stick. My coin pouch still has what I ride with: 5 gold, 30 silver, 22 copper coins. I also have a few gems in my top right pouch I found during my travels. My lockpicks are in my left middle pouch, and my few salted meats are in my bottom left pouch. I have a flask of water in my bottom right pouch, while the other pouches are empty. I put my camping gear on my back. It contains a small 2-person tent, small cooking pot with utensils, a bedroll, small shovel, and a hatchet. Once all equipped, I head down into the bar area of the inn. I look around at some of the people drinking and eating. I notice 2 of them looking at me with scowls. I'm going to keep an eye on them. One of them is wearing torn studded leather armor, the other wearing frayed robes and a splintered staff. I sit at an empty table and order a light breakfast. Half through my meal, a stranger in a brown cloak and gray hood sits across from me. His face is longer than most, with a long white goatee, bushy long eyebrows. 2 mismatched horns seem to be attached to his hood as well. But it is his eyes that disturb me. They're yellow with red irises. "Greetings, my friend. I cannot but help to notice your staff. Are you a mage by chance?" he asked. I swallow the eggs I'm chewing on. "Battle-Mage. Still training, but I know the basics," I reply. "Close enough. I have a book here you might be interested in," he says, and places a thick leather tome on the table. By the looks of the book, it's old. Very old. "What is it?" I ask. "A very unique spell book. It teaches how to cast spells and even teaches a few elements forgotten to time," he tells me. I raise my eyebrow skeptically. "Oh, why offer such a book to me? Wouldn't you get more for it at the academy?" I ask him. "I don't want money. I learned all this book has to offer. I'm just passing it on so someone else who can learn from it," he replies. I was about to open the book, but he places a hand on it. "Read it alone. Only those worthy of such knowledge may read its contents," he tells me seriously. I frown, look down at the book. "And what's make me worthy such of a book? I'm still an apprentice. I only can combine 2 elements," I tell him. "I see potential in you, my lad. I see great things in your future," he tells me. "A word of advice, though. When you leave, watch your back," he says. He snaps his finger and it is gone in a puff of pink smoke. The other patrons are also staring in confusion at the spot the man was sitting at. I pick up the book and place it in the camping pack on my back. I finish my meal, pay the innkeeper 20 silver, and make my way out. I follow the road towards the capital city, Elysium. I guess it would be another 3 days on foot to get there. After a few hours of walking, I hear some rustling in the bushes behind me. I turn around and don't spot anything out of the ordinary. An animal, perhaps. I turn back around and keep on walking. About 10 minutes later, the rustling returns. I draw my sword and ready my staff. I hear a few creepy chuckles as those 2 men who were scowling at me from the inn step out of the tree line. "Hello, boy. will be taking anything you have, as well as that book that old geezer gave ya," he says, holding a rusty-looking sword. The other is pointing his staff at me. I point my staff at the one holding the staff, and channel my mana through the staff. 2 small orbs of light, color arcane red, fire orange, circles the small focal gem on the tip. I release the magic, and the 2 elements meld together. A thin beam of fire bursts out from the gem and hits the staff bandit in the shoulder. I really need to work on my aim. Sword one charges at me, and I parry his attack with my sword. Counter with a horizontal slash from my left side at his stomach, cut open his gut. He screams and places his left hand over his wound and backs off. The staff-wielding bandit casts a healing beam at his friend, and his wound starts closing. I quickly channel 2 cold elements and spray a cone of frozen mist. The staff wielder is covered in a light coating of ice and starts shivering. I quickly raise my sword and channel an earth and water element into my sword and swing down. A line of rocky spikes burst up from the road and run towards the rusty sword user. Water blasts out of the cracks and hits the sword band. He is sent back a few meters, and I charge at the staff wielder. His eyes widen as I plunge my sword through his throat. I rip it back out and point my staff at the other bandit. I channel 2 lightning elements and spray out a wide chain of electricity at him. Since he was soaked from my previous attack, the electricity dealt more damage and left him a crispy corpse. I hunched over with my hands on my knees, panting hard. I'm still not used to casting so many spells in quick succession. I walk over to a small boulder, and as I sheath my sword, sit down on it. I pull out my water flask and takes a few gulps. Now I eat the last of my salted beef. I get the book out and give it a once-over. Crap black leather binding with no text on the cover. After a few more seconds of just looking at it, I open it up to the first page. A bright light, flash of light blinds me momentarily. I draw out the book and rub my eyes. I fall onto my back as the boulder I was sitting on disappeared. I sit up and look around. I am in some dark foreboding forest. I quickly get to my feet and put the book back in my pack. I look at it later once I know where I am. I draw my sword and pick up my staff and get into a stance. I stand still for a few minutes, just listening for any movement. A low growl to my left gets my attention. I turn towards it and see a large manticore. It's missing its horns. Its real end is conveniently small, while its head and torso are huge, but the tail still looks as lethal as ever. I slowly try to back away from it. It growls louder, advances on me. I slowly point my staff at it and cast a water and cold element through it. It gets closer and closer and leans close to the ground, ready to pounce. I charge up the energy to narrow the spread of the ice bolts. I release the spell, and 6 shards of ice soar towards the manticore, and 4 of them dig into its hide. It roars in pain or anger and leaps at me. Swat its claw away with a swing of my sword and cuts its paw. It roars again and thrusts its stinger at me. Gah! I yell as it stabs my left thigh. I swing my sword down, chop off its stinger. It roars again and backs away. My leg begins to start burning as I channel 2 earth elements together. While it's writhing in pain, I charge up the spell to increase the force of the rock the spell ripped out from the ground. The manticore stops its writhing and glares at me until it saw the rock size of my head floating with energy radiating from it. I release the spell, and the rock impacts its skull with sickening force. A loud crunching sound of bone rang out as the manticore went limp to the floor. My mana is about to run out. I'm pretty sure I'm poisoned. I pull out the stinger and attach it to my belt on my right hip. Hopefully, I can find a village or town nearby to make antidote quickly. It's the same logic applies. A manticore's poison takes 24 hours to kill. I apply what little mana I have left into healing the wound on my thigh a little. It's not closed, but it's better than bleeding out. I start heading towards what's like a dirt path and follow it for about 10 minutes. The burning in my leg gets worse and starts spreading to my shin and waist. I see the forest edge and walk out to see a large field with a town in the distance. The dirt path leads to the small town about 10 minutes away. I sheath my sword and use my staff as a walking stick. The pain is getting worse. Sometime later, I am limping into town to see something I wasn't sure I was seeing right. Horses that stood upright and clothed came up to my chest and height were staring at me with mixed expressions. They kinda remind me of the Kitsune people. They just stare at me with confusion, fear, and curiosity. Even some looked worried. I managed to take about 20 steps more before coughing up blood and collapsing in the street. "Oh my gosh! Quickly! We had to get it to the hospital," says a female. I cough again as I felt someone pick me up and wrap my right arm around the shoulder. I tried to stay awake, but I ended up passing out. Well, that, my friends, has been the first chapter of Terracana. I hope y'all enjoyed it.